Hello and welcome to another edition of the Pacers Pride Podcast. I am your host, Cody Emerson. Alongside me, as always, my good friend, Dylan Dienhart. Dylan, I know midterms are we're enjoying fall break, thankfully.
Yeah, midterms.
But I don't know if you've been dealing with any of the struggles of midterms.
Nah, I got 2 classes to worry about. So.
Well, aren't you special then?
Yeah.
All right, but this is a little later than we've been recording in years, or not, I guess it's been a couple years that we've been doing it. But that is because we have the 3 guys, Chris, Jake, and Hawk of the Born Ready podcast. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time out of your, I know, busy Sunday night or whatever you were doing to join us on the show. We greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us. This is Chris. I'll speak on behalf of the guys. Really appreciate you guys having us on. I know we've been in discussions of working something out and us doing a collab episode, so really happy to come on and excited to talk some Pacers basketball with you guys.
Yeah, I know, unfortunately, our schedules didn't kind of work out over the summer with me being not here and Dylan holding the fort and over in the studio, but we're glad we can do it, so let's dive in. So let's get to it. All right, so the first couple of questions, we're going to defer to you guys because we already talked about it a little bit last week. The first is the Pacers schedule was released. Just some highlights. There was 12 primetime games compared to like 1 or 2 that we talked about last week. Last year, actually, that the Pacers had. So the Pacers definitely caught the attention of the NBA and kind of the national media. And so they're going to be playing 12 primetime games, and they kind of have some tough stretches in there. Guys, what did you notice when you first saw the schedule and your thoughts on it now?
I always reference, and we spoke with Scott Agnes, who writes about the Pacers for The Athletic now, is when we asked him, he said, when I first look at the schedule, the first thing I notice is there's 41 road games and 41 home games. That's pretty much it. Same thing every year. You can expect that. Every single year you're going to be playing 41 games on the road, 41 games at home. But the things that kind of stuck out to me was obviously national TV-wise, going from 1 to 12, that's a very significant jump. Was actually going into, before the schedule came out, I wasn't expecting the Pacers to get 12 games on national TV. I was very shocked that it was that high of a number, but when you compare it to other teams like the Lakers, we're going to be pretty much seeing half of LeBron James. His schedule with the Lakers, we'll be seeing half of the Lakers games just on national TV. So when you, in the grand scheme of things, it's still not that very high of a number, but it's still pretty good. 12 is very solid, and I was very shocked by it. But some of the other things that stuck out was specifically, I don't too deep into the season. You look at those road trips, they got several of those, I think 3 or 4 that are 4 or 5 games or longer, but the thing that you look at is that the beginning week or so. So we kind of looked at October, and it's a pretty rough start to the year. Those games in October, I think there's 8 of them in October, and 3 of them are at home and 5 of them are away. So you got Memphis, Brooklyn, and Portland, all 3 at home. I think those are 3 very winnable games for the Pacers. The tough part is the road schedule is not very nice to them. They got to go on the road to Milwaukee, Minnesota, San Antonio, Cleveland, and New York. So I think it's a rough start to the season for the Pacers, specifically in October. They could easily go, maybe 5-3 in those games. They got to come out strong on the road. I mean, they really significantly improved their road record last season, which is very vital to that leap that they took. So I just am kind of interested to see at the beginning of the year what they do on the road in the first month, especially too, since we're going to be at 2 of those games. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I would love to go to some Pacers games myself, but unfortunately money is not the necessity that I'd like to have right now. But
you can get pretty cheap tickets for like under $20 in the balcony most games.
Yeah, I've been looking at some games. I know the Boston game on November 3rd, I've been kind of maybe wanting to go to.
Yeah. That'd be a pivotal game in the schedule, too, because that kind of gets through that first portion of the schedule we were talking about. And I think that's our first national televised game.
I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure it is. So that'll be a good test of where we're at and how we can compete with Boston. So that'll be the one to go to for sure.
Yeah. And you guys are more than welcome. I know all 3 of you to speak on the schedule if you guys want to. If anyone else wants to say anything about it.
Yeah, I actually think, this is Jake, by the way, I actually think one of the toughest stretches of games for us comes in early November. There's a really tough stretch. Luckily, we get to play most of these games at home, but starting on November 2nd, we are at Chicago, which obviously they're not going to be great, but they are feisty. Then we have we do have a back-to-back with the Boston Celtics, and then we immediately play the Rockets, 76ers, and then we go to Miami, then we go to the Rockets, then we have Miami at home. That's a pretty rough stretch, and so it's a great early season test for us. Then we follow that up with a home game versus the Hawks, which should be nice, and then we just play the Jazz again. So this is a very tough beginning part to our year. I think luckily for us, we have a lot of depth. I look for our second unit to obviously be pivotal early on, and hopefully we can withstand that early season tough schedule.
Yeah, one of the things I keyed on last week was go all the way to mid-March. They have I believe right here, it's a 4-game Western Conference road trip. Then they come home for another. It's just a really difficult stretch of the schedule. They have the Nuggets, first of all, on March 16th. They go to Portland, to the Clippers. Then we see we go to Oracle to play the Warriors. Then we get the Nuggets at home before quickly turning around and going on the road to OKC and Boston. So that's another stretch that I pointed out last week that it kind of doesn't favor the Pacers at the greatest time, maybe when they're battling for playoff seeding and stuff. However, they do get the Nets and the Hawks to kind of end the schedule. So kind of a reprieve there, but that won't be an easy part of the schedule by any means, especially, like I mentioned, when the Pacers are probably playing for playoff seeding, don't you guys think?
Yeah. And as you just alluded to there as well, those Western Conference road trips are always the worst part of the season because it really tests me as a basketball fan because those games start at 10 or 10:30,
yeah.
And I have to work the next day at 8 a.m., so it's really tough for me to stay up till 1 or 2 a.m. and watch those games. The thing that's always the worst with those games, too, is you stay up for it, the Pacers are in the game the whole time, and then they lose it in the last 2 minutes. That's when you're the most upset that you didn't choose to go to bed.
Yeah, I know that can be kind of tough, but Dylan was nodding his head in the studio in agreement as well. But so that was something we touched on. We wanted to get your guys' thoughts, so thanks for your input on the schedule. And now we're going to move to another topic that we touched on last week, and I think we talked before show. You guys have touched on it a little bit as well, but just wanted our fans to hear your guys' thoughts. If you had to give a prediction right now of where you see the Pacers finishing in the Eastern Conference, obviously we have Boston, Toronto, Philly, then the Pacers will be fighting for probably those top 4 spots. Where do you see the Pacers finishing at the end of the year?
I realistically have them at 3 on my preseason prediction board. There's some games last year that, kind of flipped. We shouldn't have lost. I think specifically to that game in Dallas, and then there was a game in Atlanta. And then we go 2-0 against Golden State. You just never really know what's going to happen in the season. There's always games you shouldn't win, always you lose. I think we are built with our depth to realistically finish behind Boston. And then at 2, I think you could either say if Kawhi comes back and he's the player he's always been and he buys in, I think that they could get 2. And then I like us at 3 fighting closely with Philly. I just think Ben Simmons can't shoot, and you got to shoot in the NBA. I think Joel Embiid gets winded on defensively because he's asked to do so much, and I just don't think they're as good as the people are trying to say they are at the beginning of the year. They definitely have talented players, maybe even generational players, but I just don't think they're there yet. I think we could steal that seed 3. Me personally, I think the guys next to me probably see it around 3 or 4 as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I envision them probably being a high end, maybe the 2 seed, low end, probably like last year, the 5th seed. But the teams that I kind of look at is, he just mentioned the Celtics, you have the Raptors, the Sixers. I feel the same exact way about the Sixers. And the other teams that I think about too is the Washington Wizards. I mean, they had a down year last season. I think they were the 8th seed. But John Wall is going to be healthy this year, hopefully. And a lot of people aren't really talking about them anymore. So I see them to improve this year, and they could probably challenge for one of those top 4 seeds in my mind. And then I also think a lot of coverage that we look at talks about the Milwaukee Bucks and the Pacers, specifically in the Central Division. They see the Bucks finishing ahead of the Pacers. That's one that I really don't agree with. I mean, you look at the Bucks and how they're assembled. Yes, they have Giannis, They have all these talented players, but they haven't really ever been able to put it together. So a lot of people are really high on Milwaukee this year, but I just don't really see it. But then again, they do have one of the top 5 players in the NBA, so they could, leap ahead of the Pacers by any means and take the Central.
Yeah, I know that's basically what we said last week was the 3 seed. I'm personally not high on, I know Dylan, especially you agreed with this, the Toronto Raptors and Kawhi Leonard, and if Kawhi gets back to the way he played, but I'm not sold on the Raptors, really. I never really have been, especially with their new coach.
I don't think Kyle Lowry is going to be the same after
he's
firing Dwayne Casey.
Because he's been no Dwayne Casey, and he doesn't have his best friend there anymore in DeMar DeRozan. But I'm not confident in the Sixers either because they lost huge pieces of their bench. They lost Marco Bellinelli. They lost Ersan Ilyasova, I believe. And I want to say I'm missing someone else, but I can't remember off the top of my head. Ben Simmons, we talked about, I think is a phenomenal player, but you have to shoot in this league. Teams could maybe just back off of him, and if he makes his jump shot, he makes his jump shot. But then you also have Markelle Fultz. We'll see how he performs. He's kind of looked good in the preseason.
Yeah. I'm not convinced about Markelle yet.
You're not really?
No, not yet.
I mean, I guess you have to do it when the games matter during the regular season, and we'll see how well he stays healthy. You guys made a good point about Joel Embiid kind of getting winded. I do see that a lot because I think he has such a high usage rate. So that could be something to look out for the Sixers. So I think the Pacers probably would finish 3 as well. I would agree with you guys on that.
Yeah, Joel, I just specifically say that because, the last time we saw him, he was just huffing and puffing against the Celtics, so that's why I think he's probably, obviously he's going to work on that, but I just think the way he's built and his body type, he's going to have a hard time being conditioned late in the game.
Yeah. Excuse me. So those are the standings, and where we think the Pacers will finish, we probably are in consensus with a 3 spot. So let's move on now to the Pacers actually playing basketball again for the first time since we all know the Game 7 against the Cavs in the playoffs. They started the preseason play. They have played 2 games so far. The first one being against the Houston Rockets. The Pacers came out with a victory by a score of 110-100. Vic looked like he didn't miss a beat, really, with 24 points and just carrying the Pacers to victory. TJ Leaf got the start for Thaddeus Young, who is dealing with an ankle sprain right now, so hope he is ready to go come regular season, but no need to rush him out there quite yet. So, Dylan, I'll actually start with you on this one since we'll get you on the conversation. What were your takeaways specifically from this first Houston game when the starters actually did play?
Where did Edmund Sumner come out of? I mean, dude's been coming out of the gate firing so far in the preseason. He's been really impressive, and it's just unexpected depth that I didn't really think we were going to have coming out of the point guard, shooting guard spot. He finished with 13 points and 6 of 8 shooting. Finished with some explosive plays at the rim. I just didn't see that coming out of Edmund Sumner. And I was a little bit disappointed with Aaron Holiday. He had a little bit of a bounce-back game the next week, against Houston. Or no, I'm sorry,
Memphis.
Yeah. But he had a little bit of a disappointing game against Houston, but he really didn't play all that much. He only played 6 minutes, with finishing with 3 points, all at the free throw line, I believe. And this was more of a stress test on the potential starting lineup than anything else other than depth. So, from what I saw, it was good. I like that Vic scored as many points as he did play, or scored as many points as he did minutes. So,
that's always a good thing to have. Guys, what did you think of the first preseason game against Houston?
Yeah, I liked what I seen. Obviously, starters, had some pretty good run there. I was pretty interested to see how Miles Turner would look. Obviously, coming off this off season in which he's been putting a lot of time into his body, I think you could definitely tell he already made some major improvements. Big thing for Miles is going to be can he get mean around the boards, kind of like how Domas has been. But Domas is another guy I think has clearly worked on his game. He's thinned out a little bit, but he doesn't lose a lot of tenacity. It's better for his game. He just attacks words. The one, obviously, you mentioned Edmund Sumner, which has been a pleasant surprise. I don't know how that works into playing time in the regular season, but it's nice to know that you have that back there. The one guy that I've been sort of worried about is Dougie McBuckets, Doug McDermott. He hasn't looked great. I think he looks like he's a little off rhythm. and maybe that's to be expected. He's coming into obviously a new team, like the 7th time in his career, so maybe he's just not ready to unpack the bags yet or anything like that. But you could tell like he was he's just kind of off. And again, maybe it's just like new team, new city type deal, but he's going to have to get going because he's a big part of the second unit. He's a big part because we didn't shoot too well in the second unit last year, and he's got to step up, especially given the contract we gave him.
Yep, I would agree. One pleasant surprise personally for me, granted TJ Leaf was getting kind of starter minutes. He played 34 minutes. I know, Dylan, you love your plus minus and how you believe it impacts the game. Plus 25, which led the team. He had TJ finish with the game with 13 points, 12 boards, 4 assists, 2 steals. He even finished with a block. Did have 4 fouls, so maybe we can cut down on that. But TJ is kind of impressing people because we talked about it a little bit over the summer. His summer league was not great by any means, really. What fans expected, kind of the jump for him to take, but it was great to see TJ get out there and play in some minutes and maybe give himself confidence and give the coaching staff confidence. Say, if Thad Young goes down, maybe we do have something here in TJ that you got, or that could help fill the void until maybe Thad gets back or an injury comes back.
Yeah.
What did you guys think of TJ and any other guys you want to mention?
Yeah, you kind of just hit the nail on the head there with going in for after watching Summer League, and we had many episodes that we recorded there where we just weren't very nice to TJ.
We did the same thing, so
yeah, the performance is just, when you looked at that, especially it's not like he was a top 10 pick. I think he was drafted like 16, 17 or overall, whatever it was. But you have a first-round pick, so obviously your expectations for him are pretty high. Last year, coming in, he just wasn't, very strong. So that his biggest liability last season was defensively. So he looks like he's gained some muscle, but obviously that summer league that we saw, that was just very atrocious. Nobody was looking forward to him going into the year. But as you said, the first preseason game, I was very impressed with him. One of the things he did do that I liked was he got a lot of putbacks. So he would go. A lot of his points came off of him just getting, sneaky in, getting an offensive rebound and putting it back up. So not something you would really expect from his game, but it was, a joy to watch him do that, because you expect TJ Leaf offensively, when he scores, most of the time he's going to be shooting mid-range or a three-point shot. So it was nice to see him, crash the boards and get those putback shots, because that's big for the Pacers. The other thing that kind of stuck out to me, specifically the Memphis game, Alize Johnson, I was very impressed with. The guy his motor just never stops. 8 points and 9 rebounds. I think he played 19 minutes. This guy, I think he's not going to get big minutes for the Pacers this season, but I think he's got, for where he was drafted at, I think the potential is very high on this guy, and I really hope he works out, because when you look at those, those wing players, he can pretty much guard several different positions, and he could play any position on the floor. So I'm really looking forward to him. I don't think he's going to make an impact this year. I hope I'm wrong, but I look forward to seeing what he can possibly do, 2-3 years down the road with the Pacers.
Yeah, you mentioned Alize and the impact that he can bring. We talked about it over the summer when we were kind of analyzing the draft and the picks that the Pacers made for a guy who I believe is 6'7" to 6'9" or somewhere in that height.
Yeah, somewhere there.
He just crashes the boards like no one I've seen come into the league in quite a while. I think some compared him to actually Thad Young, which ironically is the position he could be maybe replacing here in the future. Specifically on the Memphis game, I was really impressed how, granted, I know most of Memphis starters did not play either, but it was a good kind of, I believe Nate McMillan called it an audition for the bench to kind of build chemistry and, excuse me, just to build chemistry and get, playing together, because we know we're going to need that come the regular season. And this was also a good test to kind of get to know Memphis, because we're going to play them in the regular season opener. Granted, most of their starters did not play. I don't even Yeah, now
So
that
this
Mike
pretty-
Conley and Mike Gasol and Kyle Anderson, most of their starters didn't play, but still kind of get to know how they play and how the bench plays. So can get some tape on that. Sabonis finished with 17 in that Memphis game, 14 boards. Doug McDermott again kind of struggled, and Tyreke Evans did make his Pacers debut. 3 of 11, only 12 points, 5 of 8 from the free throw line, so got most of his points from there. Guys, what do you see from Evans in his debut? I know it's not the great shooting numbers that you wanted to see him put up, but overall, what did you think of Tyreek's debut as a Pacer?
I didn't think it was too bad. Obviously, he didn't look great from the field. One of the things I was kind of concerned with, honestly, just watching yesterday. Of course, I was watching on a very tiny iPad in a remote location, having an adult beverage. But it looked as if he was a little sluggish. He kind of looked kind of thick to me. I don't know if that makes sense. Not giving him compliments here, but he's just going to be a guy that comes in and scores off the bench. I think eventually he's going to work himself into it. He's going to finish games for the Pacers. He's one of our most talented players. I wouldn't read too much into the box score, and that's mostly just because Tyreek's been there, done that. I don't think the preseason for him is about putting up the stats as much as just getting back into the game flow. So you can tell that Nate McMillan kind of has his finger on the team a little bit, trying to see what could happen if certain guys went down. Like you mentioned earlier, TJ Leafs looked really nice, and I think just for Tyreke Evans, it's just going to be about leading that second unit, and I think there are going to be certain times where he's playing with the first unit as that guy bringing the ball up the floor late in games as well. So I'm not freaking out quite yet. He wasn't easy on the eyes yesterday, but I think he'll figure out a way to get in basketball shape pretty quick.
Yeah, and I think it's the preseason, so you can't overreact to kind of the negative things you're seeing, but you do like some of the positive things. And speaking of another positive thing, Aaron Holiday in this Memphis game, Dylan, you mentioned he didn't play much in the first game, but he got to see some minutes, 26 minutes actually, which almost led the team. Finished with 20 points, was 4 of 8 from behind the three-point line. We know that's one of his, if not his greatest strength, is shooting. He finished 6 of 13 overall. Finished with 8 turnovers, though. We kind of touched during the summer of how we'd like to see him cut down on the turnovers. So overall, we'll get your thoughts on some of the preseason action as well. I know you mentioned the Houston game, but what did you see in the Memphis game that you really liked or didn't like?
Specifically with Aaron Holiday, you got to remember this guy's still young. Like he's going to be okay. I think if we use him at all this year much, I don't think it'll be as the primary ball handler just because of that turnover problems. I think we'll try to use him more for what he's good at, and that's shooting. So I think that's going to take him some time to just get in that NBA shape, just feel it out. So I would look for that later down the road to really judge what we got in Aaron Holiday. I don't think he's going to see the floor much. I'll pass it over to Chris.
Yeah, I got one more thing to add. The thing that I really caught, and it wasn't box score wise, it really didn't have anything to do with the game, was the guys on the bench, those starters that get regular minutes and are playing. They were actually going nuts on the bench, cheering on those those guys who aren't going to play much this year, the guys who are going to be playing down in the G League. So I thought that was really awesome because you don't see that from many NBA teams where you got guys like your top tier guys, Victor Oladipo, players like that are just downright cheering, big cheerleaders there on the sideline. And I think culture-wise, it's just the Pacers right now is talent-wise, maybe they're not the best team, but culture-wise, it's just the best it's ever been, I think, or maybe in years.
Yeah, I would agree with you by far. We saw a lot of that last year, even when the bench guys were in, the starters were. You see Miles, you see Vic, you see guys getting excited for Domas and guys that were making plays. I remember the play that basically summed up the entire Pacers season last year was, I believe it was Corey Joseph, finished a layup. He may have got fouled, I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, everyone came running down and helping him up. So you kind of see that from this team again this year, and it's great to see. Obviously, we talk about the chemistry and everything. Dylan, we'll get your thoughts on, especially on the Memphis game. Do you have anything you want to add about the Memphis game or preseason in general?
Overall, I'm excited about Aaron Holiday. I know I'll mention him more because I'm just a fan of him. But I'm excited to see what he does in the G League. I don't think he's going to have much production in the actual team this year. I hope that he's a better version of Joe Young in the long run.
I hope so.
Yeah. But I'm also very concerned about Doug McDermott because he's just kind of looked lost on the offense so far in the 2 preseason games. His defense has been as advertised, which is porous at best. And then on offense, he's just been kind of not fighting through screens, not cutting as much as he usually does. So I kind of want to see him get his rhythm back. I just want to see him find his role, find his spot on the floor, and just kind of get into the groove of this team. So hopefully he comes in better shape in the next 2 preseason games.
Yeah, I know we talked about a bit last year. We kind of have a thing for small forwards and just the shooting, I guess, that they bring. Obviously, we're talking about Bogey last year, and now we bring in Doug McDermott. The defense for both of those guys kind of questionable. But Bogey, he did show some moments where he had some flashes in the pan, and Doug McDermott, I remember reading something, I think Nate commented, it's been a tough training camp for these guys because training camp was only, I believe, 1 week. So kind of getting used to the system, learning it, and how the Pacers operate kind of thing. Guys, do you have anything on Doug McDermott and what his early season struggles? Are you concerned at all, or do you guys think he'll turn it around?
I kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but I get concerned a little bit with shooters because everything about shooting, from form to mindset, it's all just rhythm, repetitions, and when things are going wrong, it messes with shooters. I mean, even the littlest of things. So I'm not super worried yet. There's still 2 more preseason games. It just takes 1 game for a shooter to get hot. But I don't think we gave him the contract that we gave him to, obviously, as you mentioned, defend. Well, if he could just defend below average instead of just god awful, I think that would be an obvious plus. We knew going in he wasn't going to be able to defend anybody, so he's not checking LeBron in the finals or anything. So I just think we need to get him going. I wouldn't be shocked to see Nate. I don't know if he's going to play the next game or what, but I wouldn't be shocked to see Nate just try to get him into a rhythm because, like I said, that was something major in the second unit. We weren't able to spread the floor. We have to have Doug McDermott stretching the floor for that second unit, or else it's really going to limit the potential of Tyreek Evans, to be honest with you. So I am apprehensive for sure about him, but I like I said, I think we just need to give it a little more time. Shooter coming into a new environment. I mean, even the littlest and minute details affect them. Yeah, like you said, though, if he's not scoring and he can't defend, that's a major issue.
Yeah, I want to touch on one final thing that we get to in the preseason, specifically in the Rockets' win. I know the Rockets played some of their starters, Chris Paul, Carmelo Anthony, and those guys, but to hold the Rockets to 100 points is phenomenal. I remember seeing someone on the Pacers Twitter, I can't remember who it was exactly, but saying if this defense can even play remotely close to this season. We know, I believe the Pacers, they wanted to say finished in definitely the top half. I don't know if it was top 10 in defense last year as far as points per game. I'm not 100% sure, but we know the Rockets obviously have the firepower of Carmelo, James Harden, and CP3, so to hold them to just 100 points, James Harden only to 17 points. I know it's preseason and whatnot, but you'd still like to see that kind of effort, especially when James Harden plays 30 minutes, Chris Paul played 29, Melo played 31, Chris Paul only finished with 6 points, had a minus 29. So, guys, what would you, I guess, take this obviously as a positive for the Pacers, considering they were able to shut down this high-powered Houston offense? They took 43, so the Houston Rockets, I guess, are already in mid-season form in terms of three-pointers. But for the Pacers to shut down this Houston squad like that, what did you guys make of that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, anytime you can hold one of the best offenses in the league, under their average, and like you mentioned, they're shooting 43s a game, and they're pretty dang good at it. So, always nice to shut a team like that down. I kind of, I keep going back to Doug McDermott, but kind of like what I said with Doug McDermott, these guys aren't in mid-season form yet, and so shooters around the league, and Free advertising, ESPN, you're welcome. But they had a stat that basically said that shooting around the league over the first couple preseason games was almost like 5 or 6% lower than what the 3-point percentage was last year during the entire season. So I don't think it's a trend that's going to continue. Obviously, if we could somehow parlay that defensive success night in, night out, which is awfully difficult to do in the NBA. But if we could sustain that intensity and teams below their average, obviously I'm feeling pretty good about our chances, game in, game out.
Yeah. So the Pacers they're 1-1 through these first two, and as you mentioned, they have 2 preseason games left against Cleveland and Chicago. Gonna get to see the LeBron-less Cavs now, and see how they did. Guys, if you want to go to the game, tickets are as low as $2. So, don't know if you want to make the road trip over to Cleveland, but you can get...
Yeah, we got tickets to that. We bought $11 seats, so I guess we should have waited.
I wish I could go to that game, but sucks that I have... if I didn't want to pay for gas, I probably could make the trip over to Cleveland. About a 4-hour
We went to Game 7 there last year when the Pacers played there, so this is kind of like a redemption for us that it was sad leaving Cleveland that day after that loss, so our hopes are that we can go this time, even though it's a regular season game. And those Cleveland fans, we were obviously talking a lot of smack, but they were just the worst. So we just want to go there, and especially we want to get a win, and we want to leave, and just say some very choice words to these fans over there, because they weren't very nice to us.
Considering you have Tristan Thompson, who still thinks the Cavs are the team to beat in the Eastern Conference because they're the 4-time.
I don't know how the NBA didn't issue a drug test. That's like 10 ounces that day. I don't know how that didn't happen, but it needs to happen.
Not wrong yet.
Yeah, because obviously, if you haven't heard, Tristan Thompson was saying that even though LeBron left, the Cavs are still 4-time back-to-back to whatever Eastern Conference champs. And yeah, Tristan, as I believe I said last week, LeBron is the 4-time reigning Eastern Conference champion, not you. But unfortunately,
exactly.
What was that?
I said exactly.
Oh yeah, it's because we know obviously LeBron carried that team. So what can we expect from these final 2 preseason games? We do play the Cavs and we play at Chicago. The Chicago game's on ESPN, so will be a nationally televised preseason game. So there you go. I guess if you're wanting to watch some preseason basketball. So what should we expect from these final 2 preseason games, especially considering the 4th one would probably be a tune-up for the regular season? I would hope, and maybe Nate throws, kind of like he did against Game 1, hopefully all of his starters are healthy and he throws them out there and kind of sees what he's got going in the regular season. So what do you guys think we should be expecting?
I think you should, just keep expecting what we kind of been expecting. We got a good team on our hands. We know the players we have. They've done it before. They've been there. This is a veteran-led group. Nate's a great coach, and you don't want to put too much stock in the preseason. Honestly, I haven't watched either game. The Colts game was going on in the first one, and then last night I was watching the fights. But, I'm a box score checker, and I believe in this team, and I think Nate's going to do what he's been doing from what I've heard and test out different lineups, see the situations, put these guys in different, lineups together and just see how they work. Test some of the rookies, get some of the new guys comfortable. Wins and losses don't matter at all.
No.
We should just look at the product. We want to see TJ keep doing what he's doing. We want to see Doug and Tyreek, have those moments where we feel comfortable. So as fans, you shouldn't worry at all. Everything's fine. Let Nate do his job. I think we should expect just good effort and different things on the field that we might not see during the season.
Yeah, I think that kind of we'll see, what we've seen the first 2 games where maybe next game we see some heavy minutes from those starter players again, and then that final game you see those, second, third string guys come in and, get heavy minutes. So I don't think the starters need to play a bunch of minutes in these last 2 games. I think if they played, you put Oladipo and Miles out there, you get them maybe a half in that next game and set them for the 4th game. I just don't think it's worth going in and maybe risking an injury in these 2 games. So I think going in with that same mindset the first 2 games, just kind of splitting it 50-50 between the starters and those bench players and minutes. And the regular season's coming up. These guys will be ready. I don't think it really matters at this point.
Yeah. Dylan, anything you wanted to add about what you would hope to be seeing in these final 2 preseason games?
Yeah, I was kind of touched on it. I was like, either one of these games we're going to see the starters play a majority of the minutes. I'm not sure if it's going to be the Cleveland one or the Chicago game, but that'll be interesting to see. Hopefully Tyreek gets some minutes along with those starters just to see how they kind of mesh together. I doubt we'll see Thad throughout this entire preseason. I assume they know what he's
resting him.
Yeah, he'll just appear against the home opener the home opener against Memphis. So yeah, I'm anxious to see. I hope we get to see some Aaron Holiday versus Colin Sexton
that would be
action
fun
tomorrow.
to watch.
That'd be nice to see the 2 first-round picks go at it. Other than that, I think it's probably just going to be let's see what the rookies have to show, and then getting geared up for the home opener on next Wednesday. So
yeah, I'm hoping that at least we get the W against Cleveland. I know it's preseason. I know I don't know what Ty Lue's going to do with his rotation or anything, but I'd like to just see the Pacers beat the Cavs because of how it ended last year. I know, but we could kind of get our revenge, I guess, in the preseason. But I also did a article earlier and where I think the Pacers sweep the Cavs this year. I'm going to make that prediction now. I've just said obviously the loss of LeBron is going to kill this team, and the Pacers should be able to take advantage. They're more deeper than the Cavs are, so that should be an advantage for them. But yeah, in these final 2 preseason games, I hope. I like what you mentioned, Don, about Tyreek, because I think we will see him kind of with the starters and obviously on the bench. Nate's probably going to try and throw some different lineups out there to try and see what works best. And I think he just needs to see more minutes just so maybe to get his confidence back, I would maybe guess. But as we said, we don't buy into too much into the box score in preseason games. So we will see where it goes from there. And one of the last topics we're going to touch on is this is a huge year for one Miles Turner. Miles is, after this season, would be a restricted free agent, and there were rumors, I believe, over the summer and near the end of the last season, like maybe the Knicks or some other team would be wanting to offer Miles a huge contract. And so, excuse me, gosh darn it, I'm coughing up. But what would you guys say for Miles this year as far as expectations, and what do you hope to see, obviously, in a contract season? Because if he doesn't perform, I hate to say that, but we do have Sabonis who can maybe step in at the center position and maybe take over, but that's worst case scenario, I hope that I'm saying. But what would you guys like to see from Miles, especially in a contract season?
We just wrapped up our NBA preview show, and I picked Miles to win Most Improved Player this coming season. I think the hot yoga is big. I think he's going to get flexible, and he's going to actually pound in the paint, and that's what we need from him. We need him to pick up his rebounding. I think he's been an exceptional shooter for his position. He's been a good guy around the rim to have. I just think his rebounding and his consistency are the 2 things that just need to pick it up. And I wouldn't be surprised if he has another down year if we do not extend a contract to him. I would not be surprised at all. We have all that cap room next year. We have a lot of options to do things. I don't know. You could make a case that we would overpay for him if he doesn't have another breakout year. So personally, I'm not going to think negative. This is the year he brings it all together, kind of like Neo in the Matrix movies. Everything's going to come together for him perfectly this year, and Miles will be Most Improved Player is my bold statement.
Hey, there we go. I like it. But yeah,
sorry.
go right ahead.
Are you good?
Yeah, we're good.
I last year we also had another award. Not to give everything away, but we do have an award that's what would you call it? The remote breaker award. The guy that you throw your remote at the TV and break because you're just yelling at them constantly. Last year, Miles Turner was that guy for me because I would literally just watch him ball goes up, and instead of rebounding, he would just kind of hang out and just chill out, have a hot dog, just watch everything go down. And so, the potential's there. You see it all the time. I mean, he just flashes it. So, I'm not quite as high on the hot yoga as Hawk is. He's very into the hot yoga with Miles Turner. But I think most improved player is not out of the realm of possibility because of how much talent he has. And last year at this time, people forget, like, we thought that Miles Turner was going to make the jump that Victor Oladipo made. And so, a year out, I mean, first game last year, he just put up a crazy stat line. Everyone in the NBA was freaking out. And so I just think he just needs to be a little more assertive. And if he can do that, he'll be fine. The biggest thing for him is, I think sometimes the want-to when the ball goes up to rebound it is just not what it needs to be if you want to be a productive center. In the Cleveland series, he got exposed a couple times, and people always say, well, look at his block shot numbers. Well, a lot of it's coming off and blocking like the little guy's shots. So, I mean, he kind of got picked on a little bit in the paint by Tristan Thompson, which is never a good sign. But I think he's going to be fine. I love the potential. I would be shocked if he doesn't have a much better year this year. And I would hate to lose him because last year at this time we thought he was our franchise.
Yeah, Dylan, anything you want to add? Obviously, we've kind of touched on Miles a little bit in kind of the up and downs he's had as a Pacer so far, but obviously in a contract year you have to perform or he may not be a Pacer much longer.
Yeah, and I want to see him become kind of our second option in the starting unit in terms of scoring. I know Tyreek will be up there in like points per game, but I would like to see Miles vying for that spot. Obviously Vic's going to be our leading scorer, but I would like to see Miles be there in the second. I want to see him kind of stretch the floor a little bit. I liked the pick and pops we had with Vic and Miles. I think Miles can be a very deadly option in that case if he is confident, doesn't get in his head. But I will say, like, I think he needs to improve his rebounding. I think that's what separated him and Domas. Domas would just attack the boards while Miles would just kind of passively watch it by. So
yeah, Domas was in fact our leading rebounder last year, and I believe we touched on it probably last season. But you can't have really a bench guy. I mean, that's kind of a good and bad thing to have someone off the bench leading you in rebounding. But at the same time, with a guy as talented as Miles and as big as Miles is, you'd like to see him lead your team in rebounding. I've talked about him. I love him just for the fact that he's a pure rim protector. I call him an elite shot blocker, and I don't see why people wouldn't consider him. He's been top 5 in blocks, I think, the past 2 seasons now. So to do that at age 21, 22, I believe, is phenomenal. He already has that part of his game down. The confidence is where he needs to step it up. Obviously, we saw him last year. Teams would leave him wide open off the pick and pop, and he'd kind of turn around to see what he needed to do when all he could do was shoot a wide open mid-range shot, and he probably would have made it half the time, but kind of lacked confidence. So I think that's the biggest thing we need to see from him. I would love to see him obviously stay a Pacer, but if the situation arises to where maybe Domas outplays him this year, or he has a down year, or heck, if a team just offers him a huge, massive contract that we can't match, I mean, I love Miles to death, but time would probably be the end for him in his Pacers career if that was to happen. Let's hope that's not the case, though. So that's what we got on Miles Turner. And lastly, to kind of close out our show, I'm going to hand over basically the mic to the Born Ready guys. Guys, how would people get to know you or just reach you on Twitter or anything like that? Social media handles, to give a shout out to our listeners about how they can get more of Born Ready podcast.
Absolutely, yeah. We just joined. We just started the podcast back in June. How it started was we've started a Pacers group chat. Hawk started it with a couple of his buddies, and then Jake and I as well. And so that's been around for I think since the Paul George trade was when we originated. So we've been just talking. That's when we started talking. Last year we kept using this chat to talk about games and things. So come back in June of this year, we were just randomly chatting, and I think I was the one who said we should just do a podcast. So literally a couple days later, we started the podcast. We were thinking of names, and then we came up with Born Ready, obviously for Lance Stevenson. So Born Ready to Pod was the name that we came up with. started doing those episodes back in June, and then obviously Lance, they don't pick up his contract for this year, and Lance goes to the Lakers. So then, we're kind of stuck with the name, and then Lance isn't on the team this year. So that was unfortunate, but we've stuck it out with the Born Ready to Pod name. You can find us on Twitter at Born Ready to Pod. The 2 is actually the number 2, though. So don't type in TO. When you type in 2, it's got to be the number 2. So Born Ready to Pod. We're also available on Instagram. Born Ready to Pod wasn't available on Instagram, so we're a different name on Instagram. I can't tell you exactly what that is off the top of my head, but if you search Born Ready to Pod, it'll pop up. And we just started off on Facebook this past week. If you search up Born Ready to Pod on Facebook, you can like us on there. So we specifically use those 3 platforms for social media, reaching out to our fans. We also are on Armchair All-Americans. We have our website. They host our podcast on their website, so you can hear us on their website or on iTunes or SoundCloud. Just pretty much a lot of ways you can listen to the podcast. And we're going to be tweeting a lot during the games. We got a lot of fun things planned for the year Pacers-wise. So this will be our first season attacking it, so we're going to be testing out a lot of new things, and we're just going to enjoy it because we're big fans, and we've enjoyed doing it thus far.
Oh yeah, and you guys are probably one of the better pages as far as doing like giveaways that I've seen as far as Pacers memorabilia and whatnot goes. I know we've done a couple of things, but not as much. I mean, it seems like every other week or so I see you guys having a giveaway. So that's awesome that you guys engage with your fans that way.
Yeah, we got a lot of Pacer stuff, and we're just trying to get rid of some of it. And the easiest way to just buy followers is just to give people free stuff, and everyone goes crazy. So we've had a lot of success with that, and we enjoy doing it. People are really happy. We got a fan that's a diehard fan in Georgia. He hits us all the time. He actually came to the Pacers fan jam. Shout out Dewan, our good buddy. We met him there. He brought his whole family from Georgia. So it's just kind of cool to see, how these interactions with people across the country you'd never meet with, and they become your friends. So it's been fun so far for sure.
Yeah. And anything you want to hit on, Dylan, before we let go? I guess I'll give you the floor if you need it.
I got nothing to add. I mean, I'm just ready for the regular season to start.
Yeah,
Pacers
not preseason. Regular season starts. What did we say? Next Wednesday.
Wednesday, October 17th.
The 17th. So 10 days away. Really looking forward to it. I know we'll be obviously covering the games. We'll probably be live tweeting the games like we usually do. We'll need to get on top of that. But as far as that goes, I believe that is it for this episode of the Pacers Pride Podcast. Want to thank the guys of Born Ready. Thank you guys again for coming on. We greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Looking forward to it. We need to do it again sometime soon.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. So that is all we got. So I don't know if we'll be trying to do... We'll probably do a show next Sunday. I would think so.
Recap the preseason.
Recap the preseason will be probably finally done, and we'll recap some standouts and stuff like that, and get you guys ready for the regular season, which, as we said, is 10 days away. So until then, go Pacers.
Go Pacers. Thanks a lot, guys.